Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, let's go birding in Baja, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader, Danny Muñiz. I'm your host, Rob Mess. I want to thank you all so much for joining us here today. Over to you, Danny.
Thank you, Rob. So thank you for introducing me. I am welcome everybody, and thank you for joining to this webinar called Let's Go Birding in Baja. I'm Danny Muñiz. I'm a marine biologist who loves exploring. I'm a naturalist. I'm a guide and friend. So why Let's Go Birding in Baja? So I am one of the guide leaders in the expedition of the great whales of Baja. And I've been living in La Paz, which is in Baja California Sur in Mexico, in the peninsula. And I just fall in love with birding. It was not my main goal when I started studying there, but eventually exploring led me to my research about birds, and Baja is the perfect spot. So let's get started. So first of all, why birding here is so special? Most of you maybe are actual birders, and you can tell me like, oh, maybe Costa Rica has tons of biodiversity, the diversity of species, and many jungles. As we know, as we get closer to the equator, we get a higher diversity of species, which is very interesting. But why is birding here so special? Well, as you can see on the presentation, I have a picture of on the one of the sides. It's Espiritu Santo Island, which is a national park. Baja is next to the Sea of Cortez, which has hundreds of islands. These are very important because most of them work as resting spots of the birds that use the route of migration of the Pacific, and has also the peninsula has some geographic accidents like mountains and oases in the middle of the desert, because most of the peninsula, if you haven't been there, it's desertic. That's why you have in the corner there's a tiny photograph of the desert. So most of the peninsula is also it has no one around. So the tiny little populations or communities are well spread in the peninsula. So that makes the peninsula has very pristine environments. So what that means that all birds find a natural refuge in this area. So also, even though it doesn't like to, there's mangroves ecosystem, like swamps, wetlands. So in Magdalena Bay, like an hour north from La Paz, which is in the south of the peninsula, we have the biggest wetland in Baja. But also the lagoons where we go whale watching, which we go to San Ignacio Lagoon. Whoever has been there, it's a magic lagoon next to the Pacific Ocean, but in the edges has still some mangroves and wetlands. So this is very important for birds like shorebirds or marine birds that can find shelter in these areas. But also woods. We have forests where you might say, like, this is incredible. Why we have, or where there's forest in the middle of the desert? That doesn't make many sense. Well, in the part of the peninsula, in the southern part, in between Cabo and La Paz, there's a mountain chain called Sierra de la Laguna. So it's not a very high up Sierra, but high enough, like 2,000 kilometers up. So that must be more than 6,000 feet up. So it's high enough to have, it's like a tiny island of different vegetation. So it's like a forest being there, like isolated in the middle of nowhere, you know? So it's so special because has a lot of endemisms. So most of the species that you can find in the peaks of these mountains are endemic because they're being geographic isolated so for so long in a natural like in because of the desert has just these remain of the forest in the top of the mountain. So they have speciated. So that means that species that you already know have now subspecies in these areas. And why is this important? Because if you love birding, you might know that there are some subspecies that you will find there and only there. And the whole and this happens all through the peninsula. In some islands, you will find some birds like petrels, like jaggers, or like blue-footed boobies that we might think that, oh, they were only in Galapagos. Well, no, they are also in these beautiful islands that are highly protected in Mexico. The whole islands in the Gulf of Cortez belong to the great reservoir of the biosphere of the islands of the Gulf of Cortez of the Sea of California. So this is why it's so special, because I think you can just come for a few days maybe in Mexico and Baja, and then you can visit some of these beautiful different ecosystems, even during the water, in the wetland, in the between the mangroves, in the desert, or in the forest. You will find these very beautiful spots, very far from human activities, and then you can see the birds um, in almost pristine areas, you know. And every place is a good place, even in the cities. They're very where they're not as contaminated, or not. There's not as much pollution. So in La Paz, by example, I like to walk along the Malecon, who's been there in our Great Wells Baja trip. You know, there's Loreto Malecon. Malecon means the street that it's just in front of the shore, like, you know, in the downtown, there's a big walk side that just go next to the water. And when you're just walking there in the morning, you can have the chance to see a lot of birds, and you don't even have to be a great explorer or walk a lot. So you just can just go birding whatever you are. So even in your garden or in your hotel, whatever you are, there will be a lot of beautiful birds. So what are the most common birds in the peninsula? Well, some of them you might think, if you live in Arizona area or California, you might think, well, we do also have those, no? But that's something we have in common because we are very close. But if you're listening from other parts of the world or farther up in North America or South America, you can see that maybe you don't have this around. So there's several brown pelicans around. The one that you're watching in the picture, it's a juvenile brown pelican. Um, that's why it's called brown. When they are juveniles, they look brownish, and then when they're on um, sexual mature and they are ready to mate, they change this color beautiful on the face, and they look with a white neck and more colorful. So we have quails. It's very common just to be walking around the mountain and see a lot of quails walking through or listen to them. Ospreys, naturally, we have a lot of shore, you know. Baja, it's a great peninsula, just all surrounded by shore. So ospreys are very common to see. If you are staying somewhere with a bunch of flowers, you'll see a lot of orioles, which is the yellow bird that it's just right here. So we have, this is a hooded oriole, but we also have orchard orioles and Scots oriole. So there's very a lot of varieties of this. This is just an example. So some of our endemisms is like the Google that you're watching down there here in the bottom of the slide. It's a yellow-footed gull. So this is endemic from the Gulf of California. So if you like to just go through your checklist on your life, this is something you have to see. It's very similar to other gulls, just have yellow feet. And Also, we have a lot of doves in the desert, roadrunners. This is very common. You can see even in the city. Um, Pirate birds or great magnificent frigates. This is the one that we're looking at the right of your screen. These are amazing. We have a nesting colony very close to La Paz. These birds are called the pirates of the ocean because they have this specific way of strategy of feeding. They cannot get wet since they don't have this oil gland to protect their wings like all the other aquatic birds. So they should not get wet. So what they do is they just attack other birds in flight when they just had fished. So they attack them to throw out their fish or drop it, and they are called the pirates of the air. This strategy is called kleptoparasitism. Yes, kleptos from stealing, you know. Let me see. Oh, of course, there's a lot of raptors in the desert. Let me see if I have some other examples in the next one. Okay, first, before that, I'll show you some of the endemic birds that we have in Baja, which is very interesting. You know, in your life list, you want to have lifers, and when you come to Baja, you will have these lifers. The Hanctus hummingbird, it likes water bodies. It likes to be around water areas, which makes it very easy to find because if you're in a place which has a lot of desert, so you know that the hummingbird will be close to oases, and this makes it easier to find it because it won't be spread in the whole peninsula. So if you go to somewhere has a river, a little creek, or even in the city when you're watering plants, Hanctus hummingbirds like to show up. But this is only from La Paz down. So this will be found just in the Cape, like Cabo area, like very, very south part of the peninsula. Also, we have this very handsome thrasher, which is the great thrasher, also endemic to the south of the peninsula. But there's another thrasher that it's the contest thrasher that it's endemic from the Vizcaíno region, which is very close to San Ignacio Lagoon, where we go with the great whales. So even in the peninsula, we have endemisms from Baja, and we have specific endemisms on different regions in Baja. So Belding's yellowthroat loves living in tiny ponds. This is very hard to find because they are very, very, very shy, but it's very beautiful to find them. And they depend on the last few oases and tiny ponds in the peninsula to survive. So 70% of their population depends on the last remainings of oases in the Baja Peninsula. So this is very important because this is a very, very endangered species. And of course, because of loss of habitat, so they like the peninsula because they can be there safer than maybe other places. Band-tailed pigeon. This is a subspecies from the Sierra de la Laguna, from this place I just told you about. This is secluded forest in the top of the mountain that it's a oak and pine forest. It's incredible how you go from the desert, start going up in the mountain through the dirt road, and you see the change of vegetation, how it gets dense and more dense, and then boom, suddenly you are in the middle of a oak and pine forest, which is amazing. From 1 hour from the city, you know, it's interesting. And the band-tailed pigeon is a subspecies that live there and only there in the mountain. There's also, you can see the yellow-footed gull that I talked about already, but I wanted to tell you, I have a picture here because to remind the name of the endemisms in the Sierra, in the La Laguna. So Bird's junco, it's a specific bird only from the La Laguna, and you have to go very high up there. There's a variation of the acorn woodpecker. So yeah, the regular acorn woodpecker, you can find it in the top of the Sierra Laguna with a variety because it has a different coloration on its face. and they're everywhere in the Sierra Laguna. They're very noisy and they're easy to spot. But this is a subspecies that has evolved in there. So in the whole peninsula, I think the Sierra Laguna has the biggest amount of endemisms. So I think there are about at least 13 subspecies of birds. There's the white-breasted nuthatch, the Pacific slope flycatcher, the Hantus hummingbird I already mentioned, the oak titmouse, Cassin's vireo, the one that is San Lucas version, a warbling vireo, Hutton's vireo. All these vireos have a subspecies living in there. Well, also, just if you like birding, I like to go through these questions again, because a lot of people, maybe if you are just starting on birding, I like to share these questions that people ask to me. Why you like birding so much, or why birds are even important, you know? Well, they keep ecosystems in balance because they help us to control plagues. That's something we know. They love eating mosquitoes, as these some warblers, they love eating mosquito, and flycatchers, of course, they have it on its name. But even like, for example, the roadrunners eat a lot of snakes. They love feeding on snakes. So you have roadrunners around your house, and maybe you don't want to have as many snakes around because they feel kind of dangerous. Well, only rattlesnakes, because we love all animals, of course. And we like to keep the rattlesnakes out of our properties, right? So they disperse seeds also. They're perfect seeds dispersers. So if you go to the Baja and you visit some islands, you'll see in top of the cliffs a lot of cactuses growing on, and that's because they feed on the seeds. They go and pull on top of some cliff, and then you'll see all these cactuses growing everywhere. And they're very important because they are the only animals that can go as far to propagate cactuses or other plants that's how we get all this vegetation in islands, right? Of course, carcasses. So the vultures and caracaras are animals that are scavengers. Caracaras are opportunistic, so they also can hunt or chase their own animals. They are prey birds, but also they love to be opportunists and do scavenging. This is very important in the desert because, when you're in the forest and you have a carcass, there's fungus, there are bacteria, and there are other microorganisms that will decompose the body and just bring it back to us to the soil as nutrients, right? But in the desert, this is a very difficult process because the condition don't allow the carcasses to rot and disintegrate as fast as in other environments. So we depend on these scavengers that make like give a cleaning service to the nature to avoid plagues or bacteria to propagate. So they actually take this the hard work, and they just clean up about any dead animal that it's around in the desert, and that's a cleaning service for the environment. And also they help us monitor environment because birds are so sensitive to pollution or temperature changes. So just their presence or absence can tell us about a lot of how the environment is. So in big cities, probably you'll notice, oh, this is very famous when their pollution indexes are very high. The first things to die, and you find just from falling from the sky, it's tiny birds that are very sensitive to these air conditions. So that's why we love them. Well, and they are very important. as providers of natural services. So, and this is my favorite, they inspire us. So every time I go around in Baja, this is where I live, I just love walking around when I need some relaxing time. And even with my kids, I have 3 kids, and my family, who was not, they don't consider themselves birders, but this is something kind of as a flu, you know. Once you get it very hard, you start making it contagious to other people, and people start getting more and more interested, because it's an easy hobby, you know. Everybody can do it, and they're very inspiring. So every time I see a different bird, oh, they're so beautiful, they make me want to paint them. Or how many of us hasn't like dreamed about flying like them, or just just listening to them, waking up in the morning and having your coffee and looking out, and even you don't see anything, you will listen to the birds, and that's inspiring to start a new day, you know. Well, I think it's very beautiful. And another question is why scientists study them. Birding in Baja is very, very important because it has helped research go on very much. La Paz is the city in Mexico with the greatest abundance, or the biggest abundance of researchers in Mexico. So because it's low population, it has in percentage of density of population, we have the highest density of researchers, and a lot of them are researching in birds, because birds are really love Baja. So one of these pictures, you'll see a lot of shorebirds. So it's some willets and some avocets. It's a mix of a lot of shorebirds. It's hard even to tell, because like in Guerrero Negro lagoons, which is in the middle of the peninsula, they gather in thousands of them. Like skimmers that are on the other corner. You can see these birds. They have a bigger lower part of their beaks. They use it literally to cut the water and looking for their prey, that is fish. And these pictures have been taken from the State University Bird Lab. So that's called Laboratorio de Aves, UABC. UABC means Universidad Autónoma de Baja California Sur. So because Peninsula Baja is divided in Baja California and Baja California South State. So this is from, a lot of these pictures will be from the lab that I did my research with. So as we said, scientists study them now because they're very sensitive to pollution, so they're very good indicators of environmental health. They are very good reference of fish stock. Have you seen all these seabirds just going down and in the water in the middle of the ocean? That's what fishermen look for when they are looking for bait balls. So these are huge schools of sardines or other kinds of fish. And sometimes you can, if you like to go exploring, sailing, or you like to go safari in the ocean, if you find some birds doing that, follow them, because you'll find a big, enormous amount of fish, and probably you'll find them also sea lions, some kinds of dolphins, even bigger fish like marlin, mahi-mahis, and even whales. Humpback whales are very common, related to be fishing in this huge amount of bait balls, where also you're going to find some birds. And birds are very obvious when they're feeding, so they cannot they can't hide where the fish stock is. You know, they will following food. And well, they represent a natural link to the environment. You know, well, so they are around us, and they are the easiest, one of the easiest thing to spot of nature when we are exploring, other than plants. You know, you see a lot of plants, and most of the times your first link to nature will be singing of birds. This is easy also because just by their presence, as I said, scientists can know how the wood is, how the forest is, how the temperature of the water is. You know, now with all the global warming, we have a big Nino event, which means the water it's going in high levels. That means in that year we had very low success of breeding in a lot of marine birds, and that gave us a lot of information about this global global warming. So this was a big red flag to start looking through that. So it was very important for researchers. Other birds that live and visit in Baja, which I love, are boobies. Normally we relate boobies to tropical areas, but we have brown and brown boobies, blue-footed boobies, but also because Baja and Sea of Cortez is very warm, and it's a mix. It's a boundary in the mix of the tropical weather. It's exactly where the circumtropical belt of the world ends in their northern limit. So we have the tempered weather or tempered habitat starting in the limit of Baja in the South Peninsula. We have this blessing of having sometimes a mix of both. So I've seen like red-footed boobies. I've seen like Nazca boobies. So also, you know, birds don't all the time follow the rules about where to go, and they don't have a map, so they like to explore further. So we have a lot of incursions of rarities of birds that like to stay, even if they're on migration, they like sometimes to stay year long, because Baja, everybody falls in love with Baja. And we have plovers, we have jays, we have quite beautiful, huge pelicans that love our lagoons on their migration route. They sometimes stay the whole winter there. They only normally they fly from the center of North America, like Canada and all those places, to places like the center of Mexico, to the lakes in center of Mexico. But brown and the white pelicans, when they arrive to Baja lagoons, they just don't go further. They love staying there. And if you're traveling in the middle of the ocean, you can see there's a picture there with two surf scooters, which are considered marine ducks. That means their life is related only to marine environment. That means has to be ocean, not lakes, not ponds, only marine. And this is one of the only marine ducks that we can find. And one of my favorites, the elf owl. This is a beautiful owl. We have pygmy owl, Cape owl, and elf owl in the region of the South Baja. They are so cute. They are no bigger than this. They are like 15 centimeters high, and they are very easy to spot if you like to walk in the night in the desert. You can hear them singing, and they are very active, and they are so beautiful. I think they're very cute. And I love to see them. This is a very good picture. I think I took that one. I can't remember, but they are very beautiful to spot, because even in the night you can find a lot of surprises. And again, they are very cute. And there's different types of jays and sparrows and a lot of varieties. And also we have a lot of visitors of ducks and geese during the winter season. This is Branta vernicula, it's a scientific name. They love San Ignacio Lagoon. When we are watching, watching, this is very common to see the brants, the surf scooters, the pelicans. But if you're lucky, you can see also other things that are like pelagic birds. What that means, that they don't live only in the coast. So their range of distribution, or where they feed, even reproduce, is far out in the ocean, like miles out of the shore. But when we are well watching, sometimes they just we cross our paths, you know. I've seen storm petrels, some jaggers, even albatrosses, which are birds that are related. They have an amazing developed sense of smell. They have special nostrils that allow them to catch every tiny particle of food that they might need. So they can fly miles in the open ocean, in the middle of the Pacific, through storms, and they don't get lost because of the sense of smell that they have very well developed. And watching them when you are exploring in the peninsula, just navigating for fun, or you are sailing as a hobby, or you are whale watching with us, it's a blessing to find them because they love also Baja. And when it's a big storm coming, boom, they just come to the closer islands, and you can see them, or they come to the closest lagoon, and whoa, that's amazing. And they like to nest also in the Sea of Cortez Islands, which are very far enough for them from the coasts, so they feel very protected in the islands, but they are not like as far as in the middle of the Pacific, you know. So they love nesting on cliffs or in big, high walls in these islands. Because as you know, just as a parenthesis, La Baja Peninsula, it's detaching, still moving by the plates moving away from the continent. So all these islands are like landscape accidents. I don't know how to say that, but so they are a lot of islands that have huge cliffs, and natural erosion make tiny holes in their landscape. And oceanic birds like pelagic birds like stone petrels, they love just nesting in there and finding shelter from storms. And who can go bird watching in Baja? As I said, everyone, everyone. These pictures are being taken from our my collaborators and teachers that research in Baja. If I think in the middle of these pictures, there's Sofia, which is my colleague also from NatHab. She's a co-guide. He's a leader, also a leader guide. And it's so easy because, as I said, you can just go bird watching in your backyard, you know, or in the hotel you're staying, or just in downtown walking in Loreto. Or if you're sailing, as I said, depending whatever you're doing, you can go do it. And I have a personal story about taking care of an elder person who had starts of big dementia, and I had to take care of him so for some days, you know. We will shift and take care of Al. He's a very close friend who just passed away last year. But one of my things that maybe made us bond deeper is that sometimes he could not even remember who I were in the last part of his life, but we will sit together just in his front in the front yard. We'll in the bench, and we put a feeder with for hummingbirds with only water and very little sugar to not cause them any harm, and just some water for the other birds of the neighborhood. And we will sit there for hours for bird watching. So we didn't even needed any binoculars or telescopes or big cameras with a telephoto, no? So everybody. And even though it's kind of expensive to get like a big telescope, there are brands for everyone that everybody can purchase. So you don't have to have like a huge Swarovski telescope, you know, which if you have it, I'm so envy of you. So you're so lucky. But in this case, I have also showing there a little kid, a girl that even little kids can get involved. And this is very important because love for nature grows from being in contact with nature. And for me, it's very important to make children participate because you cannot care about something you don't love, or it will be easier to take care of about something you love, and you cannot love something you don't know, you know. So if you, with these programs, inviting children, everybody can go. They can join us to go bird watching, and they don't have to go even far. And this group of here, it's a lot of volunteers, researchers, and friends that went bird watching in the city. We have a water treatment plant in the city in La Paz that has these water treatment lagoons, which birds love, absolutely love. So we have ducks and geese and shorebirds, and then you can see the hawks and eagles and egrets and herons that use this water treatment plant ponds to feed and to chill out and just relax around the day. And it's very easy. Actually, it's now eco park, so we can just walk around there and see all these birds. They are right there in the city. And in the other picture, I show how important is this being an economic resource for communities. Communities that live very far from the city or that have not big incomes, or that after the pandemic, they had a lot of issues about bringing back their business of agriculture or how to say, of cattle. They lost their cattle probably during the pandemic. So in this group, you'll see a group of people that live in the Sierra La Laguna, and the university and other groups are being showing them the economic value of keeping the forest pristine so birds can come and they can start being bird watching guides. So you can see there holding these bird watching quick guides. They are made for specific regions. The man on the squared fleece or the shirt, he's holding, I think, is shorebirds guide. Yeah, and the other lady has in her leg one of the guides for this area, the water treatment plant area. So they can also start learning, and that way we make also tourism more sustainable, because one of the parts of making tourism sustainable is not only making how you say that, so not only making conscience about taking care of the environment, but also of the communities that live on it, and make it fair. So if they can start participating of the tourism, it's economically a resource for them, and not only for great companies. So this makes a more equitative participation, and we can all take advantage of that. So I think it's very, very important that everyone that likes to start in bird watching can be able to do it. And well, last but not less important, let's help the birds, spread the voice. If you are not an expert of birding, you can just join someone, invite some friend, walk around your neighborhood. You can just install a bird feeder on your backyard, or just even just a water fountain, and you'll see some birds coming around. Also, if you can't put any you don't like bird feeders, you don't know what to feed them with, because this is also delicate, because you have to give them like a good balanced diet. You can just only plant some flowers in your backyard, or help keep the flowers in your neighborhood's park. Maybe if the park has flowers, you just help keeping those areas for them are like natural oasis in the middle of the cities for the birds. And then you can just walk around there. Even when you just walk your dog, you can enjoy the birds. And And I think this is very contagious. The joy of birding, it's it's very contagious. I think worse than a flu. So I show you some of the guides that I like to use that are not very heavy when I like go birding. So there's a website that I think it's called wildlifedefenders.org that has all these guides that you can download in PDF format. And I like to print them and just check them or fold them. And I can have them there for everyone to share. And so you can have a specific quick guide for the common birds of specific regions. But also you can download it on your cell phone. There's some free apps that you can download on your cell phone, or more sophisticated ones that you can unload. You just go and unload and search for birding applications, birding apps, and you will have a big list of suggestions. And or you can use a traditional guiding bird guide that are like on book, and you can bring it on your backpack or in your purse or whatever. So I have in these pictures here, I added some of one of my favorite birds that I like to find when I'm birding. The biggest one, it's variety of a yellow warbler, which is called mangrove warbler. They're only found in mangroves. He's standing in a black mangrove because of the leaves I can see. I can tell apart it's a black mangrove. And the difference is that the male develops a very, very red head, like a plumage, like a feather, and pyruloxia. And I know, sorry, this is not a pyruloxia. This is a female northern cardinal. They are very common around in the area, but they are very similar to pyruloxias, which are also one of my favorites. And another thing that I just love, because they are very meaningful for Mexican families, because of the legend of the hummingbirds. I have Hantus hummingbird, which is the region of Cape. Remember, I said it was endemic from South Peninsula area, from Cabo. And it's very common to find them nesting in the mango trees. They love nesting in mango trees, but they can nest everywhere. But actually, it's very common to see them, to find them nesting around in the city. And I think they're so cute. They have, as all hummingbirds, very, very tiny nests. And I love just how mom comes back and forth and feed the babies. And I think that's it. I think that's about 10 minutes before ending. So if you have some questions, or I think we're ready for questions. But first, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. And I hope that you enjoyed this talk.
All right. Thank you, Danny. Now, before we get into any questions, please feel free to submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. So can you talk about what is the best time of year, what months are maybe best to come down and see birds?
Okay. Probably will be when fall is starting, but winter definitely is the best time. Also because it's not only because La Peninsula is very hot, but also because we are during autumn, they have a lot of migrating birds that will use these resting spots, resting specific areas in their migration route in between summer and winter. So we can see some rarities that are passing by in autumn. The fall, in the fall. And then also winter. Winter, we already have all the migrating birds that will stay in the peninsula, and also the ones that were a little bit more lazy and didn't want to go further and find the Baja very, very interesting for staying. So I think because of weather and abundance of different types of birds. You can find these flocks of shorebirds, for example, in the winter, of thousands of birds. In Guerrero Negro lagoons and San Ignacio, you'll find all these flocks, these very famous flocks of sandpipers or willets or all these shorebirds on thousands of numbers. So I think that's very impressive. Yeah, winter will be a great time.
All right, thank you. So is it difficult to get into the mountains from La Paz or Cabo?
No, not at all. So going to the very peak of the Sierra might be, but there's roads that from La Paz of Cabo that are maybe an hour from the city, or an hour far from the city. And this depends how high you want to go, but perfectly you can go on the car, preferably 4x4. But I've been there with a common car, and then you can walk around, but it's very easy of access. I mean, you don't have to go walking by like for days. No, they're very easy access to some of these areas.
So near Acapulco, one of our guests visited a wetlands out there that was really good for birding. Do you know what that place is called?
Oh, near Acapulco? That's in the south coast of Mexico, in the other side of the peninsula, but probably he was in one estero. So Acapulco has, it's a bay, but there's close areas that are like estuaries. So probably he was in Revolcadero or Puerto Marquez. Maybe, I'm not sure, because the whole shore of Mexico has a lot of estuaries and mangrove areas, so it could be anywhere.
Great, thank you for trying. So if I was to come to travel with NatHab to come visit you, would I be able to bird on our trips?
Yes, that's what I love of being there in the whale watching area in our camp in San Ignacio, because one of the activities we do in between whale watching, if you want to join us, we explore the shore there, like in front of the cabins. We can explore every morning or even in the afternoons. You can just see all the birds that are around the camp, but also we do some walks to a very, very close mangrove area where we can see also a big diversity of herons and egrets and other shorebirds that are around there. And I love it. I definitely love it to wake up very early with my coffee and just join whoever wants to go bird watching in the morning.
Excellent. That sounds like a great time.
Yes,
Well,
it is.
Danny, thank you for answering some of our questions. That's going to be the last one that we do have time for today. So I'm going to throw it back to you for your closing comments.
Well, if you're a birder, probably you already know what lives in Baja, and maybe you already have your goals when you're very expert. I cannot tell you, you're the experts. This takes a long time, very a lot of patience to become an expert of birding. But if you're starting, don't be afraid. Just, you don't have to be an expert. I'm not an expert. I consider this takes like a lifetime. And just enjoy. Just do it as an experiment of improving your life, maybe as a mental exercise of enjoying more and feel happier. And thank you again for listening to me. This was my first webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Rob.
Danny, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today.
Yes.
If you're interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and you will receive the replay link in a follow-up email. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for tuning in.